Hello, security professionals around the world. I'm Dr. Rajan, and first of all, I would like to wish you all a very happy and prosperous New Year 2023. Since the new year is unfolding, we must rewind the Infosec technologies launched in the year 2022 and take a consolidated view of their applicability and relevantness so that they may be incorporated in the coming year financial planning activities. In this presentation, I have reviewed the top 10 InfoSec technologies of the year 2022 in detail, provided adequate information about the technology, the business case for the applicability, and cautioned about the areas one needs to be a little more careful prior to taking decisions. This information about these technologies has been collected over a period of 12 months based on the solution presentation, implementation experience, and feedback from few customers. Since the global threat landscape is constantly expanding, the technology solution providers as well are innovating to combat them very effectively. InfoSec investments are not one time. They must be periodical, and the top management must appropriately eliminate and strengthen the weaker controls that are present. Thereby, these technologies could really become handful for the organizations to strengthen the defense mechanisms. You can play this video in full and understand the capabilities of these new innovations and what problems they can solve. But remember that the InfoSec controls must only be identified as a requirement through the risk assessment. Your risk assessment outcome must point at a vulnerability present in your organization which does not have any control currently. Hope this entire presentation along with the information provided would be very helpful for the decision makers to take appropriate decisions in the year 2023. The top 10 InfoSec technologies that are listed include some of the focused domain areas such as protecting the assets and information on the cloud, because over the few years there has been an increased adoption of cloud technologies. Setting up of security operations center. This is something which will ensure that you create a clear segregation of duty to handle information security separately from the information technology. These two cannot be handled by the same person. Managing the identity and passwords. This has been a pain point across the industry over a very long period of time, but we are seeing quite a few good technologies that are coming up which can replace the password. Because remembering, creating, managing passwords are quite expensive. Consolidation of the independent security tools and products that are launched. This is another pain area because in isolation, we would have implemented the DLP solution, antivirus solution, IDS solution, the firewall. But now these are not going to speak to each other. So when they're not going to speak to each other, how do we know that each one is effectively communicating with other? Technologies like SIEM, which is the Security Incidents and Events Management, and the SOAR, Security Orchestrations and Automated Response, which includes the behavioral analytics, then the external automated quality assurance. That covers the vulnerability assessment and automated penetration testing. The first technology is about threat intelligence launched by Microsoft. As we all know, threat is an undesired event, and we need to identify threats specific to your organization. In order to do so, unless you have got a laundry list of various threats that are emanated and applicable, you will not be able to calibrate what is the threat which is relevant to you. So the Microsoft Threat Intelligence is a technology in which they use web crawlers to keep collecting information and formulate an intelligence system on the threats that are being experienced by the various organizations across the globe and their laws as well. So the threat intelligence platform has got two products. One is Microsoft Defender for Threat Intelligence. The second is Microsoft Defender for External Attack Surface Management. The Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence is a portal in which the threats that are identified across the globe are captured through a reconnaissance mechanism by virtue of the web crawlers, and they are analyzed for its genuineness through an automated system and mapped as an internet graph in order to provide you the consolidated view of the threats that are experienced by various organizations and information about those threats. What was the loss because of the threat that has been exploited by the vulnerability, and how did they combat those threats? I think this is an intelligence which provides you the laundry list of all the threats that are identified across the globe. Such a powerful information, but you got to decide, why do you need it? What you see on the screen is how the Microsoft Defender threat intelligence would look like. Now, this is a portal in which the threat intelligence information is listed, and so there are two ways by which you can obtain the license. One is a corporate licensing. So when you get a corporate licensing, you are given a user credentials through which you can log into the portal, and you can connect the information which are listed on the portal onto any of the products that you wanted to integrate. The second type is that Microsoft is going to keep it open for public as a free information for some time, but that will have a very limited information. But remember, this is not a tool which you're going to deploy in your environment. It's a portal which has a collection of intelligence on the threats identified across the globe. Now the question is, where would I apply this technology and why do I need this? Now, if you're an organization focused on protecting the information being driven by the local governance as well as the customer enforcement, then you're going to look out for a comprehensive information security agenda. But remember, information security technology deployment must be identified only as a result of the risk assessment. A risk assessment is a comprehensive exercise which shall only be done by an expert recommended is from an outside, for the reason that the outcome of the risk assessment will help you to develop investment roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years and will help you to prepare an information security vision for your organization. But when you want to conduct a risk assessment will have to be done against specific frameworks. Now, I've listed 5 different frameworks. One is a framework which is emulated by NIST. There is an octave method. There is a method called FAR. It's a factor analysis, more mathematical and scientific. There is a method called TARA, and there is a method called FEMA, which is the failure mode and effect analysis. So these are the frameworks against which the information security controls shall be identified by conducting a risk assessment. But when you do risk assessment, the experts who are conducting the risk assessment need to map what are all the threats that are applicable for you and create a threat profile. Now, how do they create a threat profile without even understanding what are the threats that are currently prevalent across the globe? So the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Platform would provide feed for people who are conducting the risk assessment and help them to evolve a specific threat profile for organization and assess the technology controls that are not available in your organization for an identified vulnerability. That's why it is required. There are multiple ways by which risk assessment could be conducted. The one I have listed and displayed here has got 8 different steps, but it is not that simple to perform a risk assessment. It might take anything between 12 to 16 weeks based on the complexity of your organization and the scope of the information security that you wanted it to be covered. More importantly, the risk assessment shall only be performed by experts. Ideal is people from an outside who have gone through multiple implementation of Infosec for various industries. There is so much emphasis on conducting the risk assessment for the reason that an organization cannot mitigate every threat. Threat cannot be eliminated. Threat will continue to exist. But you are only going to look at the means through which a threat can exploit the weakness. But even you will not eliminate every weakness. If you start investing money on eliminating every weakness, then you will become bankrupt because your job is to run the organization and make profits. You are not just going to keep investing on Infosec until your organization becomes bankrupt. So the risk assessment becomes extremely important, which can tell you what are the risks that can be mitigated wherein you need investment on technology, what are the risks that can be transferred to third-party service providers, what are the risks that you can accept. You know that these risks can be accepted and which is not going to be detrimental in any way. What are the risks that can be avoided and what are the risks that can be controlled through designing policies which are called deterrents. So in summary, the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Platform is such a handy technology for those professionals who are performing risk assessment. So in your organization, if you have got a team of risk assessment professionals, it's a good idea to invest on this technology. Else, you don't need to invest on this. The business case for you to invest on the Microsoft Threat Intelligence is that if you are an organization which has been certified for the Information Security Management System ISO 27001, the recent revision in the standard 2022 mandates that the threat intelligence must be automated. So you got to invest on that. And if you have risk professionals whose job can become further more effective, invest on that. The second technology is passwordless journey by IDBM. The passwords have been an integral part of our life over the past 3-4 decades, from the time the software applications have come into our life to simplify the data processing. Organizations have been finding it very difficult to create, manage, and recover passwords throughout its life cycle. We don't teach our stakeholders how to go about creating a password which can meet the organization standards. Initially, the standard was that the password length could be a maximum of 7 characters. It has gone to 9. Today it is minimum 13 characters. But nevertheless, password is the gateway for an access. But now it is not sufficient in the current scenario where the access for information is being requested from not only the physical environment in which the computers are connected to the servers, but also from the hybrid environment from outside internet as well. So there is a constant upgradation of the technologies to enable the authentication and strengthen the defense mechanism as well. So most of the organizations, especially the banking, financial service, insurance organizations, have enabled the multi-factor authentication for some of the critical applications. But it's a journey. The passwordless authentication is a journey. The organization will have to look at the base in which the password managers are used. Then they are all converged through a single sign-on mode. Single sign-on is perhaps an administrative convenience than the technology control for security, where the users are advised to have one single password and that can be used for accessing multiple applications. Then come in the multi-factor authentication combined with single sign-on, where critical applications are mandated. The access to critical applications are mandated only through multi-factor authentication. Apart from the password, they got thumb impression or the facial recognition or the retina eye scanning, the hardware software tokens, OTPs, and so on. But the combined effect of passwords along with the other authentication mechanisms would always give you a much better defending control. Then you move through the passwordless journey. I think that's how an organization will have to plan. You cannot directly jump into passwordless journey without the fundamental authentication mechanism being very stronger. Some of the statistics very clearly says that there are 50 million attacks on passwords per day, which is a very larger number. Because when a password is cracked by an attacker, we call them as cryptanalysts, then they have an access to information. So 50 million attacks on passwords per day, which leads to $4.2 million average cost of data breach. And the survey says that people do not like password. That's a fact. They're not coming up openly and tell you that we don't like password because we don't teach them how it has got to be done. So 51% of people do not like having a password. When you are designing an authentication mechanism, one has to remember 3 important authentication principles. Principle 1, design an authentication mechanism based on something you know, which is the password. Design an authentication mechanism based on something you have, which could be your soft tokens or hard tokens, or the random numbers that are printed at the reverse side of your debit card and credit cards. Then the third mechanism principle is something you are, which is the biometric authentication. Now, when authentication mechanisms are designed based on the sensitivity of the information that requires an access, you got to decide which requires an authentication only based on something you know, and which requires an authentication based on something you know in addition to something you have and something you are, which becomes a multi-factor authentication. See, do not blindfoldedly apply multi-factor authentication across your organization, which is a big burdensome. Now, since we have been practicing the authentication only using something you know, which is the passwords, now it becomes very necessary in today's context that there is a transformational journey required from that level to combining the other two principles of authentication, which is something you have and something you are. There are multiple technologies used for deploying the authentication mechanisms. Now, these technologies include exchanging the certificates in a client-server based environment where you use a browser for accessing an application, where the browser sends the certificate to the application, and the application in turn verifies whether the certificate sent by the client is up to date, and that's the higher order prior to providing an access to the entity. That's one technology. There's another technology where the magic links or OTPs, they are sent to your mail IDs, using which you can follow the link for authentication. The third technology is hardware and software tokens. These are the tokens which generate instantaneous random numbers. It's a random number based authentication, and at that moment whatever random number is generated and displayed on the screen in the hardware tokens, that could be used as an authentication mechanism. Then the recent technologies, which includes web authentication and FIDO, and mobile as an authenticator, they are gaining quite a lot of importance. But collectively, each one of the technology that's used for authentication has got its own merits and demerits. When you combine them, the amplification effect would be very high. I think that's how one has to look at how do we go about combining that multiple technologies to create a concrete wall, much stronger concrete wall at more than one place for the intruder to find it more difficult. The passwordless journey is a cycle, it's a life cycle. It's got multiple stages involved. The technology offered by IDMM converts the unique identity, which could be our employees, other information, or PAN information, into a QR code, which could be scanned using the IDMM application when the employee onboards into your organization for getting access to the information that is required for the employee to perform the day-to-day job. And the recovery also becomes quite simpler. Using the same application, you will have to recover the QR code, which is stored already, in case if the employee leaves the organization or for some reasons the QR code is not working properly. So that's the kind of journey that we are talking about. This screen tells you how the IDMM technology creates a QR code for the authentication, which is a unique identifier. I mean, that makes a lot of difference between using a password and using a QR code, which could be scanned to authenticate as an identity. In summary, the passwordless authentication is a journey, and organizations today, they need to move from something where using passwords alone, to combining something you have and something you are. So there is a need today which has been enforced based on the changes that are taking place, to combine multiple technologies to provide access to any of the stakeholders with a very stronger authentication mechanism. Okay, what is the business case for your organization to adapt the passwordless authentication journey? Remember, please do not jump into evaluation of this technology. You got to be very careful, since it's a cultural transformation. And so choose a specific area for POC, a proof of concept. Do it within a smaller area and evaluate the benefits that you acquire, that you enjoy, before you start applying in a mass environment. But nevertheless, this is a technology transformation journey that we all will have to undertake, and the time has come in to think, why passwords alone? So we'll have to look at combination of multiple technologies in order to create a stronger authentication mechanism. Now, the third technology is about Microsoft Entra Permissions Management. I mean, this is a technology which is specific for managing the access on the cloud deployments. Now, over the few years, the cloud adoption is on the rise. There are organizations which uses a combination of multiple cloud platforms, which includes Azure, AWS, and GCP. Now, Microsoft has come out with a technology to manage the permissions that are granted and managed across these hybrid cloud platforms. Now, why do we need this? So now the identity management solution, this is perhaps an identity management solution. Now, on the cloud, when you're using a hybrid cloud technology, an identity could be granted more than 40,000 permissions. That's very big number. See now, a permission that is granted to an identity but not utilized by the identity itself is a bigger threat. When 40,000 plus grants, permissions are possible, then manually it is not possible for the identity management team to maneuverate the effective operations of these accesses that have been granted. So that needs an automation. So this is a technology which provides the automation of activities that are happening after the entity or identity is granted access until the time the action on excessive grant is taken. So that's where this technology is going to help. Now you will have multiple cloud platforms, and the 40,000 plus access provisions that have been possible. We need to track what are the grants that are not required but excessively provided. What are the grants that are not provided which is required to be provided for an identity. So they are all required to be managed quite effectively. So this technology is going to help managing the access privileges based on the history of access by an identity and the principles of access management deployed by the organization. The principle used in this technology is to estimate something called PCI, Permission Creep Index. That's quite unique. Now, the permission creep index is the gap, the permission gap. It's the gap between the permissions granted versus permission used. that's a nice way by which the complete visibility on the access management is portrayed. So now the system generates a PCI score, permission creep index score between 0 to 100, and that's something which is a good number for management to take action. It provides a comprehensive visibility of the permissions granted versus permissions not used. See, today identity management becomes extremely complex. Gone are the days where we were not believe that the applications are accessed only by human being. Though when two applications are integrated, we forgot that there is an application which is going to seek permission for accessing information onto another application when they are integrated. It could also be within the application when you have designed an application using, let's say now, object-oriented programming. Two objects are going to talk to each other. There could be multiple objects. So if it's a modularized program, within a module, there will be multiple objects which might be talking to each other. So there is a grant of permission required. Between the modules, there may have to be interactions, and there are multiple objects which might have to be keep talking between the modules as well. It also complicates the scenario. Today, you also have the multiple devices, bring your own devices will also have an access. So we've got to look at the permission grant versus permission used as a totality, not just the access which has been given to human beings alone. So this is one unified model to manage permissions of any identity across the cloud. So it applies only for the cloud-based environment where you have deployed multiple applications. They got a hybrid technology that's used on the cloud. It also helps you not only to discover the excessive privileges that have been offered, but it also helps you to remediate by virtue of looking at the history and can make recommendations that how many objects or identities where you need to cut the permissions. That's very important because manually it is impossible to maneuverate the possibility of granting more than 40,000 access which could be linked to an identity. The software now estimates a PCI score, which is a permission creep index score for the different kind of a technology that's available, hybrid technology that's available on the cloud. So it's between 0 to 100 as depicted on the screen. It can give you the score. The score could be application wise. Score could also be group wise. Score could be for every individual employee wise, or it could be for each unique identity itself. So that's a big uniqueness in this application because that gives a complete visibility for any given identity solution. So when the solution provides so much of visibility using the PCI score, the first thing that we got to look for is how many identities have got over provisioned or over provisioning of the access. How many users have been over provisioned with access that are not required? Then you can take an action on that. So this is automated because it's manually absolutely not possible. In summary, the Microsoft Intra Permission Management is a tool that could be applied for managing the entire permissions granted on the cloud platform. It's not for on-prem solution. It's only for the cloud. And the uniqueness is that since it estimates the PCI score and creates so much visibility, we will really be able to cut out the excess privileges that have been offered for multiple identities. What is the business case for your organization to deploy the Microsoft Intra Permissions Management solution? If you have already moved multiple applications onto the cloud, and when you use a hybrid cloud technology, it's time for you to look at the solution, because your identity management team would be finding it extremely difficult without an automation. So this automates the entire cycle of providing an access, monitoring the access, and actioning those entities which have got access privileges that have been granted. It's a great tool to deploy. The fourth technology is about building your cloud security program with the help of Arca security model. Now, the Arca security has come out with a cloud-based tool that can offer you end-to-end defense mechanism for all those critical applications that are hosted on the cloud. So it is a technology to monitor the information security controls on all the applications on the cloud, which provides you a comprehensive visibility of how well these applications are being protected. It's not for on-prem, only for cloud-based. Now, the principle that this particular technology persuaded is the defense in depth mechanism may not be sufficient when the attack is not linear. So when you build a defense mechanism for protecting against these cyber security attacks, an organization will have to remember 4 C's. The first C refers to the coverage, the second C refers to the comprehensiveness, third C refers to the context, and fourth C refers to the continuity. So these 4 different C's are required to be kept in mind when you design a solution and deploy it as a defense mechanism for preventing attacks. But the summary is Arca security provides an end-to-end coverage for all those applications which are hosted and managed on the cloud. 2, the technology is able to establish a surface attack path, which means the cause and effect. We will be able to identify who has attempted to intrude into the network on the cloud. The third important unique proposition is it can only list and escalate those vital alerts that are required for action. I think that's very important requirement, because if a solution start listing 3,000, 4,000 alerts every day which are not required for the managers to act, then one has to seriously consider what is the technology which can only tell me those top 5, those top 10 alerts that need an attention and action alone. I think that's what the solution promises a lot more unique differentiators from the competition. Okay, then what is the business case for deploying this Arca security solution for your organization? If your dependency is on the cloud, where quite a lot of applications, critical applications are running on the cloud, and if you're looking for one single Windows system that can give you complete visibility on the security controls on the cloud, go for it. Now coming to the fifth technology, which is on the next generation security analytics. Now security analytics is going to consume a lot of data. These technology are referred to as SIEM, Security Incidents and Event Management, and SOAR, Security Orchestration and Automated Response. Now this is a complete shift from the traditional way of managing logs. They are all post-mortem, to a live environment in which the logs and events that are originated from every device and application are analyzed based on certain pre-configured built rules. The system is capable of initiating an automated response and action. Now, Gone are the days where um, we believed that once a human, a resource, is given an access to an application based on the authentication, the job is over. We forget after that. We don't track the behavioral aspect of how a human being manages the application for interaction until the session terminates. And we've also forgotten the other identities. It could be application to application, could be an object to object, could be the bring your own devices. These are all the other components that also have an access to your application, how they behave. The malware which has gone into your bring your own devices, it could be an iPad or it could be mobile, it might wait for once you are given an access after the authentication. It can change the entire behavioral aspect, you don't know. So I think that's where these technologies are quite intelligent in bringing those kind of capabilities, where in a live environment, the events that are generated across the multiple servers, you could have hundreds and thousands of servers and other devices. So each device is going to generate billions of logs in a day. Now we need an intelligence which can filter those alerts that can only be understood and acted upon. And that's the kind of technology these SIEM and SOA are referred to. These solutions bring significant difference in our operation by reducing the detection knowledge gap. What it means is, if a particular device has been compromised, now how much time does the capability take to identify, detect, and apprise you for action? That matters a lot. Now, this is not possible with the traditional log management solution. On the contrary, SIEM SOAR brings this capability because it has got inbuilt intelligence which can perhaps quickly identify and stop some of the intrusions based on the policies that are laid and automated. Now, the biggest advantage in deploying these solutions are the data that it's going to collect could be from both on-prem and cloud together. So the kind of data it's going to collect, both from your on-premise and cloud, it's going to look at the identity, context, access entitlements, and the business context. These are the unique differentiators the solutions can bring, because the data has to be, or data or an event has to be subjected for evaluation based on these parameters. If they are subjected for evaluation based on these parameters, then there has got to be an intelligence built in. I mean, that's something which one has to look at while implementing these solutions. But the SIEM is a higher order solution. You have to remember that if you have not implemented a methodical ITSM processes, the information technology system management processes, this is impossible to implement. You will be just beating around the bush. You would not be able to get the complete benefit. If you have not have a clear system in place, and if you have not implemented ITSM, do not go for it. It's not going to give you any kind of a benefit, because you would not be able to narrate the various different kind of situations, the controls that are required, which are required to be configured and plugged into the SIEM solution. Now let's look at how does this work, because this is a real-time environment, unlike the traditional log management where it becomes a post-mortem. If you look at it, the event which actually is generated, these events are not going to be a simple readable text. They are a little complicated. It's not possible for a human to just keep reading every event. Now the live events that are generated is a raw event. It's going to provide some text information, but they're all required to be put in an orderly manner. So this orderly manner is such that it has to look at what is this identity, who's this person, which is an identity evaluation. And what is generated? Which asset is generated? Is it generated by a firewall or a laptop or a server or a bring your own device, a mobile? And from where it is generated, the location. And it must ask a question from the threat intelligence built in. Is it a threat? So they are all required to be narrated in a systematic manner, create a data table in which all those events are classified, evaluated in a live manner for action. Now, these solutions use so much of analytics. Now, these analytics require inputs. The inputs are from the devices, the logs, and the events that are generated. What is that it's going to look at? It's going to look at the identity, it's going to look at the activity performed, and it's going to look at the access privileges. These are the feeds to the SIM solution in which the content enrichment happens first, because the text information are required to be put into a very methodical table, so that now it is easy for the system to perform an analysis, and it does a entity correlation, and using the threat intelligence built into the system, then it's going to use the whole lot of scientific methods for performing a behavioral analysis, for performing an algorithm of the domains, for performing the peer group analysis, for performing the entity rarity and sequence analysis. But the outcome you can expect is that the system is going to tell what are the outliers. The outliers are detected just based on the behavior. It can aggregate and tell you, right, the violations, and it can compare the threat models specific to your organization versus what's happening in reality. And it can send you the responses, or it can act on the outcome of the responses based on the model that you choose. If you choose SIEM, it has certain capabilities, but if you choose SOAR, it has got complete automation of the action as well. But you need to be very clear in deciding which is required for you. If you are not an environment where structured mechanisms are not available, okay, if your environment does not have an ITSM practices in place, better to choose the SIM after having put the ITSM practices in place first than moving into SOAR. SOAR is the most complex solution to implement. Okay, in summary, these SIEM and SOAR are the good solutions to implement because it can bring down the detection knowledge gap in your organization. The only question is, what is required for me? Is SIM suitable or SOAR suitable? That's a call that you'll have to take. The recommendation is that if you do not have a mature practices in place, SIEM is the first thing to be looked at, not SOAR. Then take the process maturity journey to the next level after having implemented SIEM, reap the benefits for quite some time, and then upgrade it to SOAR. That's what I would recommend based on my experience. Okay, what is the business case for you? Now, these solutions are fully based on the number of events. Most of the solutions come on a cloud based, but now they're all event based. The number of events that are generated in your environment, you need to have a quantified knowledge about how many events are generated. So more the number of events generated, more is the money that you're going to spend. So you got to be very, very careful and clear in scoping the SIEM and SOAR solution. Okay, now the sixth technology is achieving lateral security using NSX firewall. Okay, we all know that firewall resides at the perimeter. Now, just before the router, the hardware firewalls are always placed, and this works as a transport layer, L4, layer 4. But we know that the firewall fundamentally performs packet inspection of the packets, both incoming as well as outgoing. And it also does a very important role of the NATing, which is the network address translation. However, in the recent years, the introduction of application firewalls, which resides at the layer 7 application layer for the web-based application security, has enhanced the security in a combined manner, because it does the job at layer 4 and it also does the job at layer 7. So there is a combination. Over the last 1 decade or so, the growing use of virtualization and the move towards software-defined data center have enabled the speed, scalability, and agility. The biggest question is, when you are able to use virtualization and the hypervisor could actually help you to um, expand the scale of your operations in the data center, but what happens to security? So you have to still, you will have to still wait for the packets which are originated at VM node level from the hypervisor. It has to reach to the perimeter. So until the time it is originated from a hypervisor, where VM resides, and the perimeter security, something happens in between. Now, how would you control that? That's a big question. So NSX firewall provides an answer to that. Let's look at now how it works. The NSX firewall architecture is deployed in such a way that the firewall is commissioned at every VM node level. So if you look at it, when you virtualize your data center, there are more virtual servers that resides. Now, at each virtual server, there is a data transaction, which means there are packets which are going to be processed, both incoming as well as outgoing. So by virtue of commissioning the NSX firewall at every node level, then the perimeter is shifted to the lateral level, which means across the VM nodes, the packets which are going in as well as the packets that are coming out of every node is inspected. This would increase the defense mechanism in your data center, and that's the beauty of NSX firewall, is what is claimed. When you are designing the information security controls, one must ensure that the controls are completely covering the Goldilocks zone. Let's understand what is this Goldilocks zone. This terminology, Goldilocks zone, was coined by NASA in the year 1970 to describe the characteristics that must be simultaneously present for a planet to support life. Fine. But how do we extrapolate this to an IT infrastructure design? The extension is, when you are designing an IT, you must also ensure that the IT infrastructure design should have the security controls coexisting. So I think that's how the terminology Goldilocks zone is applied, and VMware claims, by virtue of commissioning the NSX firewall at every node level on the hypervisor, the security controls are now given at the hypervisor level instead of this is getting placed at the perimeter level. So that would perhaps shift the defense in-depth control into a lateral security. So in summary, the NSX firewall offers comprehensive security across the Goldilocks zone. So the technological advancements in the firewall segment, when the firewall was considered to be a perimeter, into the firewall offering the lateral security, is a good concept by itself. And especially the data centers which are scaling up using the virtualization technology are the one who will be beneficiaries, since the security controls are transferred to the hypervisor and the every VM node gets inspected. It means the packets which are going in and packets which are coming out of VMware node is inspected. So it's a good technology to look for, and now larger data centers can really pursue this technology. Okay, now the business case is, does it apply to an organization? Very much it applies to an organization if you have a data center where the technology, virtualization technology is pretty much in place, and you have a lot of virtual servers, you need to really look for it. The only precaution is when the perimeter is shifted to the lateral level on every node at the hypervisor, every node is going to generate so much of events. Now, where data centers which already have commissioned solutions like SIEM and SOAR need to be a little more proactive in terms of defining the scope. Otherwise, it can have a very, very big budget. It can increase a big budget on managing your SIEM because they are all based on the number of events. So the events could actually multiply so many times. So be careful in scoping. Otherwise, it's a fabulous technology. Now let's look at the seventh technology innovation. This is more of a journey, which is called SSC, Security Service Edge by Netscope. All right. See now, when an organization starts implementing a security program, we use a distributed inspection points approach. Now, what does it mean is when we find that one of the critical application which is hosted is facing an intranet, then we look at can we implement SSI, the secure socket layer, so that it protects between the browser and the server. When we start worrying about the intrusion into our network, then we look at IPS solution, which is the intrusion prevention system. Okay. When we look at emails are exchanged with critical information, then we look at a secured MIME solution. Secured MIME is the template, secure template, which can ensure that the confidentiality, integrity, and non-repudiation services are fully met. But now, when you wanted to protect any stakeholders exchanging the card information, the most sensitive card information, then we start implementing email DLP, okay, data leakage prevention for email. And we also look at implementing antivirus solutions, anti-malware solutions at the endpoint. When we are concerned about the administrators accessing critical servers and applications from a remote, then we would look at SSH, the secure shell. And the moment we start engaging with solution service providers on cloud, then we look at CASB. Okay, CASB refers to the Cloud Access Security Browser, which is a mediator between the service provider, cloud service provider, and the client. Okay. So we would also look at SWG, the Secure Gateway for Online Security Threats, SWG. Fine. Now these solutions, when we are implementing, they're all pointed solutions, which means now they don't talk to each other. When they don't talk to each other, now the inspection happens at distributed places. Okay. So that probably does not give us the combined effect of if they are all converged into one single point, then the aggregated advantage is what is missing. Fine. Now the SSE, the Security Service Edge, provides this advantage of converging these technologies, and the convergence will lead to consolidation of the capabilities into one single platform. So the inspection would happen at one single platform. That's the main advantage. But you will have to look at this as a journey in terms of bringing cultural transformation than implementing a product. That's what you got to look at it. The convergence solution could be broadly categorized into two. One, the SSC for network services, and the SSC for security services. So the entire network services could be converged into one single platform, and the security services could also be converged into another single platform. There are quite a few solutions, but this is a completely cloud-based solution offered by Netscope, and there are quite interesting offerings. For example, the Netscope Private Access is a solution that could provide services to protect the private application access. The remote browser isolation solution will ensure no website code runs on endpoint. There are multiple services. I'm just looking at a couple of examples to quote. The convergence of these services into one single platform could be like the nervous system of a human being. Now we know that the nervous system is the one which connects all the organs. Likewise, the converged points in SSC platform would speak to all the applications and network components and inspect at one particular point. That's where the advantage lies in. So when the convergence happens at one particular point, that all those services are now put into one single box where the inspection happens at one particular place. So when inspection happens at one particular place, the advantage is that when they offer a single agent, single management console, and single platform, it improves the productivity of the entire security solution to a very different level. The SSC offered by Netscope works with this kind of an architecture where there is a zero trust policy engine. Now, at the convergence place, the inspection, when it happens, there are so many checkpoints that are being driven. Now, these checkpoints could be something like when an access is requested for, right? First, you ask, should the service be allowed? And if an activity is to be performed, check whether should the activity be allowed. If an instance is be created, ask should an instance be permitted, and look at from the person who has requested, should the user be trusted more from a contextual basis, and should the location be trusted, should the device be trusted. And when it talks to the access control framework, what it does is it ensures that all those converged points are inspected based on the zero trust policy engine. This is a single agent, single management console, and single platform for inspecting. Okay, in summary, the security service edge is fundamentally a transformation journey that you will have to look for. Now, the more important point that we are looking at here is when we are implementing a pointed solution, okay, the aggregated benefit is not being achieved. So how do we go about converging them so that the inspection happens at one particular place? Is a new thought, okay, and it's a new innovation. So I think this is how we will have to keep looking at to take the SSC framework into an organization step by step. Okay, the typical use case, the first question that you'll have to ask is, what is the outcome of your risk assessment? Now, does the risk assessment point towards taking up a convergence using SSC for network services, or is it for the security services? So which of the services require an SSC for convergence in order to have a better amplification effect? Now, the other important point from a security perspective that you got to look at is when you start looking for convergence technology more and more, then you should not compromise on the availability perspective. So when more and more convergence happens, then the question of single point failure is something which has to be evaluated and see whether that is as well addressed before you start implementing. The eighth technology is on zero trust architecture. The zero trust architecture is not something new. This has been existing for quite a long time, but from the pandemic, the usage of zero trust architecture has become prevalent, primarily for the reason that the access to application is not limited to employees who work within a perimeter. The perimeter is now expanded because they can access the application from anywhere, including the devices could be multiple in nature. The device could be an iPad, could be a mobile device, could be a laptop, right? So the zero trust architecture is becoming quite important in this current scenario. But when we talk about zero trust refers to no connections to corporate networks and system should be trusted. That's a foundation. Now, the users, devices, and systems all must be authenticated and continuously verified at multiple points before accessing network, system, and data. So that's the foundation of the zero trust. Now, the zero trust relies on some of the important parameters. One, principle of least privilege. Two, microsegmentation. Three, multi-factor authentication. Four, the user and identity management. Five, the behavioral analytics. Six, the continuous trust verification. So when we talk about zero trust, architecture, these are all the parameters upon which zero trust relies on. Now, the zero trust network access framework version 1 was existing already, and it's been improved because there were certain shortcomings, and the version 1 had been upgraded to version 2 is a TNA zero trust network access, which takes care of the least privilege principle, microsegmentation, the MFA, user identity management, behavioral analytics, and continuous trust verification. Now, the product launched by Palo Alto Networks, Prisma Access, meets the ZTNA 2.0. Now, the Palo Alto Network claims that Prisma Access is a one product which is available on the cloud, can monitor all the application traffic and the network traffic as a single platform, which will ensure that the traffic analysis is completely based on the ZTNA 2.0 network. The Prisma Access delivers three important functionalities. One is the continuous trust verification. Second is the continuous security inspection. Third is the protection of all the data that travels through Prisma. Now, the hybrid worker who gets connected with the Prisma. Now, the continuous trust verification is driven by three important parameters. One, the user ID. Second, the device ID. Third is the app ID. So the continuous verification mechanism will meet all the parameters that are required as per ZTNA version 2.0. The second functionality that it offers is the continuous security inspection. Now, the security inspection in Prisma is driven through A, DNS security, B, advanced URL, 3, Wildfire, which has got a malware database, which is an updated database which keeps validating is there a presence of a malware as well. Now, the third important functionality is the protection of all the data that travels through Prisma Access. That's being delivered by virtue of the DLP, the data leakage protection mechanisms. With Prisma Access in place, any user who wants to have a connection with an application will get connected only with the application and not with the network. Since the user is directed to the Prisma application, the ZTNA connector, which is the mediator between the user and the final application, will ensure that the user is connected only with the respective application and not with any other thing. And more so, when the users start establishing connection with the application, the entire traffic until the time the user session terminates, they're all continuously verified for its trust and continuously inspected for security based on the ZTNA version 2.0 framework parameters. The another important uniqueness, Palo Alto claims that the Prisma access has been inbuilt with a technology called ADEM, Autonomous Digital Experience Monitoring. Now, this Autonomous Digital Experience Monitoring system is a single window system which will help automated remediation capability to be built into the system. Now, what it means is that from a user who wants to have an access to an application which is available on the cloud, so the user might go through multiple means. They might use a Wi-Fi, go through a router. They might go through an ISP, and it goes through the Prisma access, and then it reaches the SaaS. In case of any problem, since the ADEM, the Autonomous Digital Experience Monitoring, tracks the entire footpath, now it is going to help the IT help desk where there is a troubled spot from the user to the final access of the application available on the SaaS. The automated remediation capability would be able to provide adequate information for resolving the issue. In summary, the Prisma Access promises three important deliverables. One, all applications and the other network traffic are continuously verified for its trust. B, they are all tested for the security. Three, the traffic is completely protected. The data in the traffic is completely protected through DLP. So it's a product which promises so much based on ZTNA 2.0, and it is really worth looking at how do we apply this product in a small scale before we move up on the curve. Okay, the business case for your organization, where do I apply? You can start in a small way because the product Prisma Access promises quite an important capability. So in a very small area where if you have VPN users, a group of VPN users, instead of going with the VPN technology, we can look at how the Prisma Access could replace for a given small set of users and see what deliverables it offers to us, and are we happy with that. If on a POC basis this is done, and if you're happy with this, I think this is a great technology for us to embrace on a large scale. The ninth technology is called MDR, Managed Detection and Response. In fact, this is not a solution or a product. It's a service being offered by multiple vendors today who will manage independently the entire security operations center. Now let's understand what the security operations center is little detail. Now when organizations have started commissioning information security program and tools, initially they depend on their IT team. So IT team also handles the information security as well. But when you wanted to achieve the higher order of maturity level, the Infosec team must be independent of the IT team, and their reporting should also be to two different levels. It's primarily for the reason that IT is like manufacturing and Infosec is like quality control, or IT is like software development and Infosec is like the software testing and validation. So many organizations must have outsourced their IT environment to a third-party IT service provider. And if you expect the third-party IT service provider to manage your Infosec as well, then we are committing a blunder, because they cannot coexist together, and both of them cannot be given the same responsibility. Fine. Now, the information security events, incidents, and logs management is one of the very, very complex phenomenon, and it requires highly skilled people on multiple domains. And in the current scenario, it becomes extremely difficult for organizations who are not onto Infosec. Infosec is not a core business. It's very difficult for you to retain these highly skilled individuals. So when you gradually moving into a security operations center, now what it means is a centralized system of highly skilled, technically skilled people who own the process of how to manage the entire signals that are emanated by the various information security tools and deploy technologies to automate the entire process. Thereby, the incidents are detected, analyzed, responded to, and remediated. So it's typically a centralized team of people who are capable of detecting, analyzing, responding, reporting, preventing cyber attacks. But now this team can vary, anything between 5 members to 100 members based on the complexity of your environment and the size of your environment. But when can this situation be achieved? The situation could be achieved only when organizations have established a high level of visibility into all those assets and the events that are happening across the networks. So if you have not deployed technology to manage the visibility part of all those assets and handling the events across the networks, then outsourcing the management of SOC activities to a third party is not possible. I think that's the point number one that we got to understand. But now, what is the anatomy behind the managed detection and response services? But now, if you are looking at the security operations center's key roles are: one, threat intelligence; two, threat hunting; three, threat research. So there is a team of specialists who are required to be only looking at the threat-based intelligence and keep looking for what are the threats that are currently applicable and performing a research on the threats that are identified and that's been exploited in many organizations. So they are all required to be looked at by one set of people on these three important segments. Now then there is a second objective the SOC team is required to meet is detection engineering. And this is the most complex area where the SOC engineering team, or you call it as a SOC analyst, they are required to look at what are the signals that are being emanated from the various Infosec tools that have been deployed. But these signals, what signals are we interested in? Because not every signal is going to be all, quite useful for us. So the what signals are pertinent to us, and in order to filter those signals, you require a lot of automation. I don't think organizations would even understand what kind of an automation is required for the detection engineering to identify filter signals. That's one area where we got to look at why don't we outsource it. The third important objective that the SOC need to meet is the event analysis. The events that are triggered from every device that has been commissioned in your organization. The fourth objective is incident response, identifying and responding to an incident based on the signals that are detected. The fifth important responsibility is mitigation and remediation. The mitigation and remediation is perhaps a joint responsibility if we are looking at the SOC is to be outsourced to a third party, because some of the mitigations require money to be invested. Those mitigation plan which does not require money, just a manual effort is alone required, then the third party service provider to whom the SOC services have been outsourced can do that. Otherwise, it has got to be their joint responsibility. Now, let's look at the second part of why do we need the SOC operations center to be outsourced. The organizations must have already deployed quite a lot of security tools. It could be tools on emailing, it could be endpoint detection mechanisms, it could be firewall, it could be identity management solutions, it could be the network telemetry services. But this could be done on both physical as well as on the cloud-based environment. Now, each one of the tool will perform a certain function. Each one of the tools will perform a certain function. But what is that which is common in all these tools? If you're not able to find a commonality in all these tools, then centralized management of the SOC is not possible. The one commonality all these tools bring is that they provide signals. Now let's look at an endpoint solution could provide a signal for detecting suspicious malware and suspicious activity. A firewall could provide a signal for an intrusion attempt. Now, an identity management solution could provide a signal for an unauthorized network entry. An email alert could provide a signal for a phishing kind of an activity or attack. The network telemetry services could provide signals for identifying rogue assets. Fine. But now, what is the signal? How do I understand the signal? How do I interpret them? What signals are pertinent to me? What signal can lead to a threat to my industry, to my company? So the identification of signal itself is a very, very complex phenomenon, which in a naked eye, in a normal human being, a network engineer, if you expect a network engineer to interpret, understand the signal, it's very complex. You read a log from a firewall, you won't know what signals are. It really needs a lot of automation even to find out what signal is all about. But those signals are required to be interpreted by team of experts, because it's not just one person who will be able to interpret, understand the signals. So when you have a team of experts, the team of experts on each of the information security domain, which is a very complex domain by itself. So the signal identification and the process through which a signal is converted into a case or a ticket is what an SOC center will have to do, and that perhaps justifies the need for looking at the outsourcing of the SOC operations center with a competent organization. There are many organizations who offer the MDR services to manage the SOC center, Security Operations Center. Now, before we finalize any of these MDR service provider, one has to understand the engineering behind the SOC. In fact, I was listening to Mr. Antonio Mary, who's the Senior Director Product Marketing Engineering of Sophos, who was delivering the capability of their SOC services from Australia. Very impressive. Now, what happens in terms of signal detection? Let's understand. So the organization has got multiple security tools. Now, if an SOC center will have to manage all of them, the signals that are emanated or provided by these security tools will have to be fed into a telemetry services, and there is a big data lake, and the data lake feeds the entire information into a detection pipeline. This is a live detection pipeline in which quite intensive processes follow to identify a case. Now the detection pipeline starts with an ingest and filter mechanism. Then the data is cleansed and it's enriched. Then it's correlated. Now there is quite a few statistical tools might be involved here, because the correlation need not be based on one single signal. Many times you have got to combine signals. A signal from an endpoint device may be combined with a signal from firewall many times. So the correlation analysis happens there. Then you prioritize, escalate. Then a case is created. The case is reviewed by an India operations team, and the case gets assigned. So this is not manually possible. And this is something which is to be completely automated. The kind of signals that are being um, provided by each of the security tool will be quite large in number because they're working 24 by 7. The data center is not shut in the nights. So 24 by 7, each of the tool is keep on providing you the signals. But these signals are required to be analyzed, but you need a very different kind of an automation. So the process through which these signals are analyzed and case created is the one a very important aspect we'll have to consider before we start evaluating for outsourcing this SOC. But once the case is created, then each of the organization who offers these services might follow a very different kind of a workflow until the resolution happens. Now, but by and large, the process involves a triaging, analyzing, responding, monitoring, and remediating. But now, this entire process is something which will have to be managed by a team of experts, and that is pretty, well outsourced rather than just kept by the organization themselves. Now, in summary, MDR is a service offered by uh, multiple organizations who have specialized people for managing the SOC, Security Operations Center. Now, the question is, are you ready? Is your organization ready? Have you deployed technologies to create the complete visibility of all the assets and to manage the events? If you're ready, then do not invest in building an SOC team if your organization core competency is not on information security. It's better that it's outsourced. Some of the parameters that we'll have to look for is the process through which the signal detection from each of the security tool until the case creation and the remediation is one that we'll have to look for. Probably the second component that you got to look for is what kind of an automation that's done. Maybe now their credibility and the experience in terms of managing global customer SOC centers. Okay, I think that's what we got to look for it before we start outsourcing these services. Okay, now the business case. Can I apply to my organization? That's a big question. If your organization is ready and have deployed technologies to bring visibility of the tools already, and you got multiple security tools have been deployed to manage the events, it's a time for you to look at why should I keep everything within me? Why should I have to manage such a complex, highly skilled employees who may not stick with me? I think that's something that you'll have to look at before you start outsourcing the entire MDR services. The 10th technology innovation is the external continuous security assessment, which is called quality assurance by NST Cyber, who have come out with a product called NST Assure, which is a cloud-based solution, which performs both the vulnerability assessment and the penetration testing in all the platforms together. But this is not something new. I know I've been handling the security portfolio over the last 1.5 decades plus. The vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, which are called as the external quality assurance on the information security area, they are all very, very painful. I mean, the pain areas that I expect the new technology to address is the traditional VAPT is time box driven, which means some of the assessments we perform on a quarterly basis, some on a half-yearly basis, some on an annual basis, but we don't have a basis for it. Fundamentally driven by the money that is required to be expended. Completely manual. The outcome is very highly voluminous. The external VAPT vendors sometimes have given me even 1,000-page report. What do you do with that? This reporting is not management sensitive. This management is all by numbers. You got to understand next in 1 week's time, what are the 10 high vulnerabilities that are required to be fixed? If I don't fix it in the next 10 days time, then there is a threat which can actually create a big impact on the organizational brand. I think that's the kind of number that's required to be done, which is not there. The current traditional technology. It doesn't tell me what vulnerabilities are required to be fixed first. Now, the tracking of the action that is to be done on the vulnerabilities that have been identified and closure. That's a painful area because it has got to be done manually. Very time consuming, and the collaboration that it is required between a network administrator, a database administrator, a hardware technician, and an application architect. A lot of collaboration is required, and many times the gaps are they're all loosely bound collaborations. We have to use multiple toolkits, one for the OS, one for the hardware specific tool, operating system specific tools, database specific tools, application specific tools, then the device specific network penetration testing tools. Very, very complicated. A lot of money will go into that, and you will not be able to collaborate all them into one single information as well. I mean, that's a very painful point. And another painful point is that you'll have to have a skilled resource. And SMEs, when they recruit a person for performing a vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, when the person becomes quite skilled, then they are being absorbed by a larger organization. So that's another area where the current traditional approach of VAPT lacks a lot of clarity. But what we expect is that the approach should actually move towards we must be able to perform the entire VA and PT using a one single platform. It must be an active assessment. The system should be able to continuously discover the workloads both in on-prem as well as in the cloud. Someone has to validate the outcome. It should not be left to the choice of the tool. Prioritize high-risk vulnerabilities. Coverage must be for all the applications, APIs, cloud infrastructure, components, level security through one single window or one single platform. Actionable threat intelligence. Now, don't give me a 100-page report. Tell me the outcome of the vulnerability assessment penetration testing. Now, what are the actionable threat intelligence? Automated compliance dashboarding. If my PCI DSS audit committee is asking for 1, 2, 3, 4, then the system should be able to provide a specific dashboard for PCI DSS compliance. Now, RBI requirements are 1, 2, 3, 4, then the system should be able to give me an RBI related compliance dashboard, SEBI related compliance dashboard, SOC 2 related compliance dashboard, and ISO 27K compliance related dashboard. I think that is the expectation. Now let's look at whether NST Cyber offers the cloud-based NST Assure product delivers these. The traditional approach of performing vulnerability assessment and penetration testing has got gaps. Be it the VA and PT is done using EASM or vulnerability scanning tools or penetration testing tools or BAS or red teaming tools. They have shortcomings, as I explained to you earlier. NST Assure has got 4 modules. The first module is called AASM, which is Active Attack Surface Management module. The second module is called CAPTAS. CAPTAS refers to Continuous and Automated Pen Testing. The third one is called AppSim, which is a simulation tool for application threat. And the fourth module is called TID, which is a Threat Informed Defense, TID. We have been told that this particular module is under development and soon this gets added. Now, AASM, the Active Attack Surface Management. This is a module which is completely responsible for performing continuous discovery of assets. Now, it performs an active assessment, and the outcome of an assessment is validated manually by the team of NST Assure. The validation is performed by the manual means. Now, it has an integrated EVM module, and this module is responsible for performing external vulnerability management, But this EVM module performs vulnerability management on all infra, web application, mobile application, CDAs, and APIs. I mean, that looks pretty good because there's one module which performs the vulnerability on all the IT assets in both on-prem and the cloud platform. The second module is continuous automated pen testing. The penetration testing is fully automated, which is a good sign, because once the penetration testing is automated, it is going to give us a consolidated view of the vulnerability management outcome and the automated pen test outcome as well. But the outcome of the assessments are aligned with Metier pre-attack framework, which means that there is a reference to an internationally accepted framework whereby the activities performed by this tool is validated. Third one is AppSim, a model which simulates the application threat. And the fourth module is the Threat Informed Defense, TID. Coming to the NST Assured dashboard, it looks pretty promising. Now, based on the outcome of the continuous assessment, there would be a risk score. The risk score is between 1 to 100. So the risk score is assigned on every asset, and this could be summed up for a given location, or it could be summed up for a company as well. The second aspect of reporting is the risk trend. The risk trend is we can perhaps compare the trend of risk between the last iteration and current iteration. The third one is the exposure trend analysis. That would perhaps give us the improvement that as an organization one has been making it over a period of time. Now, this will be very handy. Let's say if there's a corporate organization where there are multiple entities under the portfolio companies, where you can perhaps compare the improvements that have been made between company A, company B, and company C. If it is one larger company but you've got multiple locations, then you can compare the location-wise analysis and see which location is maturing into the next level. Okay, in summary, the NST Assured by NST Cyber is a product which is promising. Based on the information presented, it looks that one single tool which can automate the entire vulnerability and penetration testing assessments. I think it's a worthwhile technology to really try for, which promises to overcome a lot of shortcomings in the current traditional manual method of performing the external quality assurance, and provide a clear management visibility of the improvements that have been taking place over a period of time. Okay, the business case. Can I use it for my company? Of course. I think looks very promising. You can try this tool for any one of the location, or for any set of assets that you think, because the tool is going to be available on the cloud and you must be able to see the outcome pretty quickly. It's a good product to try for. I would be more than happy to help you with my expertise in case if you require. Please do stay connected with me on this number, +91 91762 98162. Have a great year ahead.